let's dive into the Bruce Springsteen album. So Born to Run, this is in 1975. This comes out 4 years after Led Zeppelin. What's the story with this? Why is this so significant to you?
Okay, so my sister and my brother were members of a ticket organization in Toronto called Cheap Thrills, which basically was kind of like season tickets for all the concerts that went on at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. Maple Leaf Gardens was the old hockey arena that was replaced by the Scotiabank or Air Canada Centre, where the Maple Leafs played, and they would put concerts on. And so this organization, Cheap Thrills, got a bunch of tickets, and you became a subscriber to it. And every time a concert would come around, you'd get first refusal on your season tickets, essentially. So my sister and my brother was there for a while, but my sister really held on to her membership. She would often say, I'm not going to this concert. Do you want to go? And so one time when Springsteen was coming around, my brother got these tickets, and he said, do you want to go? And I didn't know anything about Bruce Springsteen at the time. But I thought, I mean, I'll go with you. I want to go see a concert anytime. Sure. And he took me. And it was one of those really life-changing moments. I'd never seen a concert. And it wasn't the full, they call it the concert bowl. So they actually sliced it in half, like sideways. So he played on one side of the arena and everybody sat on the other side and on the floor. Excuse me. He played for about 3 hours and 20 minutes, something along that line. I knew nothing about him, and I fell in love. It was incredible. Like just the performance, the power, the songs, unbelievable. So I ran out, and it was actually the Darkness on the Edge of Town tour. So I got that album and Born to Run at the same time and listened to it and went back. And Born to Run was just like, again, I had never heard music like it. Like things like, Night and Jungle Land and songs like that, Backstreets, that were just like, that he evoked this image of life in a world that I knew nothing about. And the descriptions were so vivid, and the pictures in my mind that came from listening to, again, another long song, Jungle Land, right? 9.5 minutes, something like that. Right. Again, I guess I'm drawn to these sort of epically long pieces of music, but it takes you on a journey. Right. It takes you on a journey. And then songs like Thunder Road and Born to Run, I mean, just rippers. Right.
Undeniable.
And just, and to this day, like, people go out and see him and he plays those songs, and it's unreal. And, I just found him as a performer and as a songwriter. I just loved it. And it didn't matter that, like, I wasn't particularly a saxophone lover or anything. And still, I'd say that, the saxophone the way he used saxophone in his music, you can get away with it very little for me in rock music with saxophone. I find that, Springsteen used it great. Obviously, Jerry Rafferty, that one, Baker Street song, incredible hook. Otherwise, it's hard to get away with it. It can be really cheesy. It was never cheesy in Springsteen music for me. And that album particularly is just something that again, it's the situation of seeing him live was really, I don't say this about a lot of situations, but it did change my life. It really opened my eyes to something new.
I saw him just a few years ago at the Rogers Centre in Toronto. So 55,000 people, no opener. And like you said, where he went 3 hours and 20 minutes, I'm pretty sure he pushed 4 hours at this show, to the point where, normally there's like an 11 o'clock curfew and then they can get fines and stuff. Well, he's playing and the whole lights in the arena go on, basically being like, hey, we got to end this show. He keeps playing. And then you see hundreds of workers with their like orange vests on. They keep getting closer to the stage, wanting to start doing their job. And he went like another hour. He must have paid fines. It was unbelievable. And what you felt was that he was playing for the people. Like, we're not done here. This is our moment. I will deal with the repercussions. I am a man of the people. And I think that's where he got that reputation, is, the everyman, the boss, the hardworking,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you pay essentially overtime, like union rates, after a certain time, you're paying double time and a half. So you're paying overtime. Promoters don't like it because it just eats into the bottom line. But you're right. He loves to play for the people. He loves to play long sets. I'm listening to his book at the moment, actually, his biography. that he wrote, and it's an audio book. Well, I got the audiobook version, and he reads it, which is fantastic.
That's what you
And
want. Yeah.
he talks about playing, shows, all night long on New Year's Eve, playing all night long till the next morning. And him and his bands, like he just loves playing long shows. So it's great to go see him.
They just announced an upcoming tour, right? They got a date in Toronto, they got a date in Ottawa, and apparently he's so popular. I don't know if this is true. I'd have to fact check, but apparently he's so popular that you can't just go and buy a ticket. It's a lottery system. So you go and you sign in, basically saying I'm ready to buy a ticket, and then you're allotted like a lottery number, and some people get to buy and some don't. I mean, what can you do when you're that big that you're playing the biggest stadium possible in the city and there's still a lottery number? What's that?
Play it twice.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, some of these people do have 2 or 3 stadium shows in a row, the Ed Sheerans and the Taylor Swifts and the Shania Twains. So the album comes out, and this is his 3rd album. The first 2 albums, there was all this hype that he should be the next big thing, and they weren't big commercial breakthroughs. So critically, people loved it, but just didn't break through with the big singles. So with this album, he was given an enormous budget in a last-ditch effort to get that commercially viable hit. And it ends up going on to sell over 8 million copies globally. It was a massive hit. It established him as the superstar that he's been ever since then. I found out that Jimmy Iovine actually engineered and mixed this. That's is that early Jimmy Iovine then?
Sure. He started out as an engineer in the studio. Yeah.
That's so wild, the success he's gone on to have as an engineer and producer, but then also with, the stuff he's done with Apple and Beats by Dre and all those things. A businessman there, I would say.
Not a businessman. Smart. I mean, incredibly smart person, right? Knows what people want at the right time, and did an amazing job on this record.
And one thing that's different about this album is every song kind of has like a piano intro to it. Do you have any idea why they would do that? Instead of just starting every song, they kind of build into every song.
I guess it's just the way he was writing at the time, right? That he liked the intro. He loved Roy's playing. Roy was a very flowery player, right? He's very lots of articulations and lots of movements in his fingers, lots of arpeggiated parts. And I guess he liked to hear that to get him into songs, at least on this record. There's a lot of pressure on him for this record, for sure. And even more so on Darkness on the Edge of Town, right? Because he'd come off of this for success. There was huge pressure for the next one. He felt more, I think, on that. I watched this documentary about the making of that album, and there was massive pressure for that to be successful as well.
And it wasn't as successful, right? It was later on Born in the USA that he hit the heights again.
That was big. But he did an album after that called Nebraska, which was beautiful. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's like basically like home demos, but incredible mood. Like I love that Nebraska record. It's really great.
So according to Acclaimed Music, this is the 16th most celebrated album in popular music history. I don't know how they tally that. But again, Rolling Stone top 500 greatest albums of all time, number 18. So like this is getting to the very top of all time. And I have one review I think you'd like. So in a rave review for Rolling Stone, they wrote that Springsteen enhances romanticized American themes with his majestic sound, ideal style of rock and roll, evocative lyrics, and impassioned delivery that defines what is magnificent, defines what is a magnificent album. It is the drama that counts. The stories Springsteen is telling are nothing new, though no one has ever told them better or made them matter more.
Yeah. And another journalist said, I have seen the future of rock and roll, and it is Bruce Springsteen. I mean, what pressure that is.
Yeah. So apparently that quote came before this album, and he went through some of the first 2 albums where he didn't get the breakthrough that the quote was, prophesizing, and that the label put a $250,000 marketing promo behind this album and use that quote. So that's where they tried to blow up that quote that this guy says this is the future of rock and roll. And then it actually came to fruition on this one. And I've heard that Springsteen actually hates that quote, that it put way too much pressure on him at an early age. And it might have hurt more than it helped.
They were young at the time, right? Like a lot of early musicians, like a lot of early rock and roll musicians, they're pretty young.
Yeah. And he's a case where it was a label that believed in him and they stuck with him despite 2 albums that didn't break through commercially. And, apparently nowadays it's more like if you don't hit, you're done. There's not as much time for development. And I remember bands like Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet is like the 3rd album or the 4th album. And they used to really invest in that long-term vision. And we got a lifetime of amazing Bruce Springsteen albums because the label stuck with him after the first 2.
Well, this is the way that the music industry used to work. And I rant about this a lot, that you develop a catalog artist by supporting them through their early learning of how to write great songs, right? Nobody comes out of the womb knowing how to write classic music or amazing songwriting. It takes time to hone a craft like anything. You're honing a craft, and to say, well, you got to make it on your first one, otherwise you never get another shot, is really destructive, I find, and especially to an artist. And then you don't develop what I like to call a catalog artist, right? With somebody that they make fans along the way, and they work it live as well, but they write album after album, they get better and better until one, like Born to Run, or in Springsteen's case, his biggest one was Born in the USA. But you get to a point where you hit your stride, and then you develop a fan base that is going to buy your albums and listen to your music for a lifetime, right? And those things tended to fund the newer projects where you would again sit with the band for 2, 3, maybe 4 records before they broke through, and the cycle went that way. Now it's down to the American Idol model of like, well, got to do it on your first one or bye. And that's really sad, because I don't know what are we missing? What are we not getting from some artists who had some early stuff that maybe wasn't quite as successful, but had promise?
Yeah, I hear it takes on average like 5 years for a band to hit their prime or to really figure out who they are and what they do. So, all the bands that get signed after their first year or second year, it's like that first album they haven't quite peaked yet. So it's tough to, that's the benchmark of whether they're successful or not, or they get dropped, or they get a second album. That's tough.
Plus, when you're young and you're writing your first set of songs, you've had your whole life and whole life experience to write that first set of songs. And sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's really successful. Well, then you're asked to do another one within another 8 months. So it's like trying to get the material and trying to get the, like maybe you've got a better songwriting craft, but have the experience of, subject matter to write about. You have to turn around very, very quickly. It's quite difficult for a young artist.
It's also tough that, after, you have a lifetime of experience to write the first album. And then if you have, say, 8 months for the next one, it's like, well, for the 8 months since the first album, you've just been touring and playing shows. So it's like, you're not really getting any new experience there to talk about.
That's why on second and third albums, there's a lot of road songs, a lot of songs about being on the road.